Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Grandmasters European region. We've got two more matches for you coming up today. It's going to be Viper versus Seiko coming up next, Subtle. And yeah, it's our first five-match day. We've got these last two to finish off. And Viper, known for bringing his own take on things, and I think he actually even tweeted he was looking for a lineup that was different, something a bit spicy to bring for this week, and couldn't find anything that felt that great. So he ended up kind of hashing this lineup together last minute and isn't totally happy with it, but I guess we'll see how it goes.
I mean, if he was looking for something spicy and said that he couldn't find it, I don't know what his definition of spicy is, because he's got Egg Warrior. You know, this isn't a Bomb Warrior. This is like a classic Pain Warrior, or whatever you want to call it. You know, Bomb Wrangler, Risky Skipper package, Eggs, Rampage, and the new Shield of Honor thrown in there as well. He has Zoo, of course. Like, Viper's pretty much popularized Zoo in the European region now, at least in this metagame with this build of Zoo. And then he has kind of aggro Miracle Rogue, whatever final name we're going to settle on for this archetype. We're still going to have to work on that one because, again, we have this problem where, like, some people call it Secret Rogue, but there's no secrets. Some call it Stealth Rogue, but then there's builds with no stealth. Like, Viper's cut the Vendetta package entirely, and he's gone for a much more aggressive build with Intrepid Initiates and Eviscerates in there instead. So his lineup is still pretty off the wall, although, yeah, maybe by Viper standards, it is a little bit tame.
Yeah, and we are going to see a rarity, Subtle, which is a Warrior Mirror here.
Yo.
And it's not even a true mirror because Seiko playing Bomb Warrior up against the Pain Warrior from Viper. This is kind of cool. I'm okay with this. This seems cool to me.
Yeah, I'm like slightly surprised. Like, I guess I should have adjusted my expectations, right, with how many insanely powerful cards were released in the new expansion. But, like, Shield of Honor was one of the cards that it, like, evoked the biggest reaction from me when it was released, because, like, okay, Pain Warrior is the best deck right now, and you've printed a card that's essentially just a strictly better version of a card that they already play in their deck, right? Like, that's insane. But yeah, I don't think I quite gave enough credit to just, you know, how many other completely new archetype-defining cards they came out with that were going to shift the meta entirely. And so I was expecting to see a lot more of this deck in this expansion, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, I'm also pretty excited to finally be seeing it in action here in GM.
And honestly, this is going to sound like sounds like a weird dig or something, but I think your expectation was reasonable, because I don't think we've had an expansion like this for a long time.
Yeah.
It's basically just thrown the meta around and just said, oh, actually, now these decks are bad and these decks are good. And they're just very, very different archetypes. So pretty crazy overall. But most importantly, Subtle, what do you make of the matchup, even if we have to draw on the basics of, like, pre-expansion experience?
I do think that the Pain Warrior has the tools it needs in this matchup. It can make sticky board states, it can be aggressive, and it can threaten to end the game with burst damage, which are all things that Bomb Warrior is potentially weak to. And then if you kind of flip the scenario around, can it defend? Well, heck yeah, it can defend. It has, you know, the same Armor Smith Risky Skipper package that the Bomb Warrior is packing, but an even more robust one that is able to gain even more burst armor than the Bomb Warrior is able to do in a lot of positions. And, you know, stack that with the ability to, you know, Sky Raider into Cobalt Sticky Finger, for example, like any of those outcomes that can just be like straight up game ending. I think Pain Warrior has enough tools to be getting on with in this matchup.
And this is going to be a tough egg to crack here for Seiko, because already you've seen the value of that card you were talking about, the Shield of Honor. Like, what is Seiko supposed to do? We talked a lot about Bomb Warrior never wants to swing Wrench Caliber into a minion most of the time. You want to just go face stack the damage. Well, you definitely don't want to swing it into a Divine Shield 5/2.
Nope. A Divine Shield 5/2 that just summons a 3/4.
Look at the damage.
Yeah, it's nonsense. Utter nonsense. That Shield of Honor has just done so much work already. But here, exactly, is why you do it. That threat of the Bloodsworn Mercenary coming off the top there for Viper, which would have been essentially just game-ending. Seiko still gets to play Hearthstone now at this point, because he was able to deal with the damage Divine Shield minion. The pressure is slowing down now, significantly so.
I did wonder whether it was ever the other way round for Viper, where he could potentially play the Armor Smith because he's so far ahead, and hold the Risky Skipper plus the the pirate for next turn to try and go off with either a Blood Bowl Brute or the mercenary?
I think it was worth playing the Sky Raider here just because there's options where he actually gets to develop a significant amount of pressure, right? Like if he hits like South Sea Captain or the 2/3 or something like that, like he's actually able to make a pretty strong push and just keep up pressure immediately this turn. I think it was probably worthwhile.
Is he weighing up playing the mercenary anyway? Surely not.
I would imagine that's nonsense.
His opponent's on 13 though, like...
It is, yeah.
I'm sure there was at least a small spark of temptation.
Yep.
And also a quick nod as well to Seiko, another player who's one of our more adventurous deck builders. He is playing a few additional tools for himself. He is running the Galakron, which is pretty regular, but double sword and board in his Bomb Warrior list, which is not standard in any way.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was entirely out. I think there's two fundamental builds of the Bomb Warrior. There's one that plays a few more weapon effects and goes with more card draw, like plays a Battle Rage package as well as the Cutting Class package, or just one or the other. And then there is this build that plays Evil Quartermasters and Sword and Board just for a little bit more resiliency and some anti-aggro tools. I think the two variations are both fairly common.
Shield Slam looks pretty clean here. Again, I don't really think Seiko wants to take 5, although you could go back and say, well, on 6 mana, is Viper really going to burst him for 10? Probably not.
Maybe.
Although, honestly, with those Shield of Honors, you do have to be a little bit even more careful now, because there's just, there's extra tools that can activate, like Inner Rage into Shield of Honor on a minion is a lot of damage.
Yeah, it also changes the endgame combo breakpoints because essentially their Rampage costs 1 now instead of 2. That changes the max output on the Kor'kron Bloodsworn combos at the end of the game as well because they can do everything cheaper.
And also, there is a 1 Rampage in Viper's list as well. Oh, there you go, as you can see. So there's still the ability to make, like tankier minions as well that are slightly damaged. This is a rough hand, though, now, for Viper, honestly. Really missing either card draw or just something to build on with all these damaged effects.
Yeah, it's really stalled out, hasn't it?
Is it ever just, like, Skipper Armorsmith into, like, Rampage just to stick something?
What now?
No. It looks bad. I think anything Viper does this turn looks bad.
I mean, he has the Blood Boil Brute play, but he does then leave himself vulnerable to essentially all of the mass removal in his opponent's hand. But I think he needs to continue to be aggressive here, right? Like, you can get punished if you commit your Skipper and then you roll into, like, a Battle Rage down the line. But he's just going to concede tempo fully here. Try and reset. Does seem to indicate that Viper now is going to look for some card draw and try and build up to a burst combo later on instead.
Now Seiko has a few options here. He could actually just go for the Horde Pillager and drop down a Titanic Lackey on the 2/3, create a bit of an aggressive board and have a weapon equipped to start swinging. And still work in hero powers, or he could go for the second Titanic. One thing I'm pretty sure of, he doesn't need Galakron quite yet. Do you think there's any respect to a Blood Bowl Brute with this, with not playing the Horde Pillager?
I don't think it's Blood Bowl Brute specifically. I mean, having 1 extra minion in play that can get damaged is certainly something that you will consider. It certainly became a point where this was the most common deck in the game, that everyone had Blood Bowl Brute maths pretty much burned into the frontal cortex of their brain. But I think in this scenario, Seiko's just prioritizing 2 things, which was taunt and armor. He doesn't want to skip armor up on any turn, and getting taunts up regularly and often to protect from like weapon damage, like weapons being drawn and just little bits of weapon chip damage going face, for example.
Yeah, that's my question. But he could do all of those things definitely anyway and have a 4-2 on board, right? This turn looks exactly the same, but with a 4-2. Right. It was just interesting because it is a whole extra minion, right? Like, it's a big deal. Just going to be the Blood Bowl Brute. Again, Viper taking it relatively slowly, but this does raise a question for Seiko, saying, well, you don't kill this. I got some good cards in my hand to combo with this damage dude. That's now a ton of armor, Seiko, all the way back up to 24, and of all the minions to get both, the Doc, pretty good one there to help this weapon become maybe even fairly immortal at this point. I guess the Lord Barov can say something about that in the future, though.
He can, but there are bigger problems fast approaching here for Viper, because suddenly Seiko is all the way back up at 24. He's pushing enormous amounts of damage. There's already 5 bombs in his deck. So even if he picks up the Battle Rage, which is, you know, far less likely than drawing a bomb at this point, but even if he were and he was to pop off with some huge Battle Rage turn to try and get to his Korkron and whatever combo damage he needs to end the game, he's just drawing a whole bunch of bombs in the process, and he's probably going to lose that race. Like, it's really difficult to see how to piece this together for Viper from here.
Someone's got to lead the charge.
There's one thing for sure. Someone does have to lead the charge.
Yeah, and I think now Viper's just decided, especially with this Bomb Wrangler pickup, that it's just going to have to go off, and maybe not even next turn, maybe the turn after. Potentially with, like, Skipper, Bomb Wrangler, double Mercenary or something crazy. I don't know. Like, he has to do something big, but the longer he waits, it just gets harder and harder.
He's making this trade that looks like a Deathwing turn? He's going to Whirlwind. Okay, I was going to say, Deathwing would surprise me here, but it seemed like because he was sacrificing the 1-1 so the Deathwing wouldn't attack it, that it was leading to that line. But I was going to say, this looks very much like a Krasnov turn to me, because I want to fit in those hero powers, and I want to be attacking every turn. And you only had 1 charge left on your weapon, so I want to get that buff turn and start swinging. But
the
he's
combo,
willing... Go on.
The combo of Krasnov plus the Galakrond hero power is ridiculous.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You see that and you think, why are we only allowed 30 health as starting health? Like, you just like 3-shot me. What's going on? Like,
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, the use of the Whirlwind, like, very liberally, essentially just to kill a 1-1 there, was not something I was necessarily expecting, but you can kind of solve games with Bomb Warrior to a certain degree, where it's like, well, okay, I smash face this turn, I clear his board. I smash face next turn, I clear his board with Deathwing. I smash face next turn, I clear his board with Brawl. Like, you're probably there at that point, right? Like, you don't need a Whirlwind in your hand anymore.
And also, especially against Viper's deck, you could get into a situation where Whirlwind is actively bad, right? Because there's Bomb Wranglers, there's Armor Smiths, you damage minions to maybe receive buffs if you can't get a true board clear. So maybe just saying, 1 mana, deal with this 1-1, so it's gone. It's probably might just be worth it.
Yep, very fair.
What now? Do try to keep yourselves alive. I'll show you who's boss.
Lord Barav coming into play. As the one and only time you will hear me try and pronounce it correctly, according to Celestalon. And now back to our regularly scheduled Lord Barov.
Yeah. There's your one. That's all you're getting.
Yeah. I hope you're happy, because that's all you're getting.
Wait. Okay. Looks like probably just a Deathwing here, right? Is that just fair? Just clean this up? Keep it simple? Or boom trade into the Barov?
Yeah, so there is some counting that needs to be done here, for sure, because, like, boom go face is an option, certainly. I know the Armor Smith is on board, and that's kind of terrifying. But just generating all those boom bots might be relevant to ending the game, particularly when there's 7 bombs in your opponent's deck after this attack goes through. But that's probably all just too cute, and there's no real reason not to just clear the board in the end.
And the boom can just come down next turn, right? Like, this is going to clear the board. It's going to give Viper the minimal amount of armor, obviously with Deathwing Order and whatever, but it's going to give him the minimal amount of armor gain. He still gets to hero power swing, and you can just play Boom next turn and cause the issues for your opponent then. So, although, again, I would have liked to have seen the Boom turn just because it would be funny, I do think it's a solid turn in from Seiko.
10. Alright, we're good. But yeah, I think it's worth stopping and counting there in that position. Because, for example, if like Play Blastmaster Boom hit the barrel of like on average put your opponent dead to like 1 bomb, for example, like you probably do it in that scenario, right? But I don't think it was that much damage.
Now just yet again, just no real good target here. And now with the risky skipper gone, it's just that little bit worse. Yeah,
yep. Sounds about right.
There was no Bomb Wrangler play there for Viper to go for, and Seiko taking a win with his Bomb Warrior in game number 1. And Bomb Warrior not receiving a ban is a relatively big deal as well. Just going to double check on everything here, but yeah, the ban actually was Seiko banning away Demon Hunter from Viper, and Seiko's Priest has been banned out as well. So just interesting the way especially when you get 2 players that definitely do their own thing with lineups, when they clash, the bans do get a little bit weird sometimes, because as you can see, it's not Bomb Warrior both sides of that. And then, for example, Viper isn't even bringing Priest, which then messes with the secondary option of bans as well sometimes. So it's very, very interesting to see overall. I do believe...
I think Seiko as well in particular has shown a willingness to think outside the box in terms of bans, and also in like Specialist, for example, like I guess the equivalent process of banning, where he changed his mind from one series to the next against the same player about which variation of his deck he wanted to be playing. Like he certainly doesn't strike me as a player that just, you know, accepts conventional wisdom about like, oh, this lineup bans this deck. You know, this variation of your specialist deck is the one that you always want. Like, he is very willing to just rely on his own intuition, to reflect on things, just to try and make sure that he's maximizing his percentages in every game and every series that he's playing.
Right, and I do believe we are going to be going into a Zoo Mirror Subtle, which is one of the more one-sided mirrors we see. I am just glancing over the deck list to see if there's anything really standout that could make an impact.
Let's have
Seiko is playing 1 Broom in his list, but the rest of is all 2 of, so 2 Vultures and so on. Viper splashing around with a few 1-ofs, the Soul Shear, the 1 Brittlebone Destroyer that we've seen from him before, 1 Cult Neophyte, and 1 Penflinger. So although the overall plan of both decks is obviously extremely similar, there are just a few differences that could make an impact. And I would say, at least for me, Saul, that the Broom for Seiko gives him at least a chance of coming back into a game where he's fallen behind, whereas that's what I feel that the Zoo Mirror leads into as problems most often.
Both players just have the turbo nuts, Raven. I don't know what's happening.
A crazy game of Hearthstone, that's what's about to happen, Saul.
First player to hit Raise Dead wins? I guess that's where we're at right now.
I think the Broom does make a difference, honestly,
I think you're right, yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. On a serious note, I think you might be spot on. It means that, you know, obviously, whichever player were to draw Raise Dead or another Flame Imp or whatever else, like, they're going to have their nutty pop-off turn first, most likely. The difference is Viper doesn't have the tools to recover if he's the person that doesn't go first, whereas Seiko can. He does at least have a chance to come back from behind.
And Seiko, if you remember, I think it was week 1. Was playing Brooms in some of his decks as well. So, you know, again, just an early adopter of something a little bit outside the box thinking, like you were mentioning, because Brooms really didn't get talked about too much, and then really kicked off into week 2 of the expansion. But Seiko was already ahead of the game.
This mirror is so toxic, dude. How is this a matchup?
Well, it's not going to be for long, is it? So.
Oh my goodness.
I wonder if...
Seiko just play the Broom out for tempo this turn as well.
Nah, you just do it.
You just
do
play Broom,
it.
right? The whole extra 1/1.
Tap, refresh, Flesh Giant, spend your mana. Oh, it's a bad tap. It's a good tap in a turn or two, but it's a really bad tap right now because Seiko just ends up floating 1 million mana here. I know it's 2, but 2 is essentially a million when you're playing Zoo. Like, the things you can do with 2 mana and a Dark Glare are utterly ridiculous. Game's not over. Expected the game to be over, and it is not quite over.
Yep, turn 2. Most games do end in this match.
And this is sort of a discussion I had, because we were testing this with Daruk, I think, who, by the way, Daruk is the greatest Zoo player the world has ever seen. But, you know, we were sort of talking him through some of the situations, and like we were talking about one particular play where he wanted to wait a turn because his Dark Glare turn got better if he waited. But the argument I was giving to him is like, right, but because you're in the mirror, you're losing to a hand of equivalent value. If your opponent has the same good hand that you have, you let them do it first and then you lose. Right. Which is why you saw Seiko go off so quickly there. Because if Viper had the Dark Glare raised dead hand himself on turn 3, Seiko would then be playing from behind, and he doesn't want to be doing that.
I do love, though, that Seiko played the Giant that turn. It might have been tempting to go for some other options, but the Giant is good, not only because it's an 8/8, but also it gets it out of his hands so he doesn't have to worry about Nightshade Matron discarding it next turn, because he is almost certainly planning on needing a Nightshade next turn, and if he doesn't, it's because he's probably won the game anyway, so who cares?
Yeah, speaking of game winning, are we reaching that point here for Viper? Tour Guide comes down, Flame Imp refreshes. Was there really no way to like get the Giant down and then refresh mana back up to the Brittlebone Destroyer? I don't think there was, right? Because that was the like truly game winning play if you could do that. Right. But I don't think it got there.
Now, the broom.
Yep.
It's a big deal because suddenly it's not just Nightshade Matron for my rush minion that can trade and help. It's just the whole board!
Yeah, and last season we kind of divided GMs into 2 groups of people. There were the people who believed in Zoo, who were the Zoomers, and the people who didn't, who were the Boomers. And now we have a whole new subdivision of the Broomers, of which Seiko is the captain.
Yeah. Look how powerful one tech inclusion can make a turn. It is ridiculous. Room is so good. Because Viper's Brittlebone tech also looked great there because it killed the Giant and gave him a chance. This game was probably just closer than it looked. Obviously because we could just sit and see the Broom in hand.
Yeah. And all the legal damage goes face here, right?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you just deal 7. And then the Broom can do whatever it wants. Yeah, seems fine. Alright.
Oh, nice 0 mana life tap you've got there, Viper.
Why don't you press that button? See what happens.
And he does.
Thank you very much.
And that is going to be the game. And it was just it was a good effort from Viper. And against most other opponents, that game would have looked a lot more even because the Brittlebone would have fought back, snapped the Giant away, and then the game maybe not for long, but would have continued a bit more evenly. But Seiko with the Broom tech, there you go. It's paid for itself. Even if it does nothing for him for the rest of the weekend, it has done a job and effectively won him a game there. So looking really good for Seiko, going 2-0 up. And that means Solly only has his Mage left over. And I was going to say, the Mage, relatively tame for Seiko. Looks fairly solid. Oh wait, Archmage and Tinnitus is rocked up.
Yeah, big old Tony thrown in there. This card honestly did impress me to a degree in Specialist Week. Killing All Day, who is arguably one of the best Tempo Mage players in the world right now, has put a ton of work into that deck, hit rank 1 Legend on ladder with it, has brought it into GM over and over again, looks very, very clean and smooth with the deck overall. I believe it was him that was playing it as in one of his secondaries, as a potential counter to priests and warriors and so on and so forth, just at that top end. And it did impress me as a specialist tech. Do I want to play it in quite a few matchups I could name for you right now? No, not really. Is Zoo one of them? No, absolutely not. I do not want to draw a 7-drop. Thank you very much for the illustration game.
I will say, though, the other tools that Seiko has do look quite good. The Violet Spellwing, nice to have nice and early. Some players aren't playing that. The Wand Makers as well. Just a solid card that gets you almost certainly another solid card to fight back some early aggression and maybe get to some of those answers for an early Dark Glare. So although, yes, you can see the Tony on the far right, everything left of him looks great in this early game for Seiko.
Yo, double ones. Agreeable grunt, Raven.
I'm actually playing that game at the moment, and it is funny.
Are you really?
The text, yeah, I am. Like, the full text support is also great, obviously, but quite funny sometimes.
No, don't. It's still good.
So Viper, he's getting beat down a little bit here, but the Expired Merchant with the Hand of Gul'dan is going to help open up at least his next few turns.
It is, yeah, and crucially now finding that Dark Glare as well. But yes, the big issue is the amount of damage he takes next turn, because even as just as he can see it, he is taking, what, 9 next turn from just trade and cast Arcane Missiles currently, if he doesn't add anything else to the board.
Yeah, and if you've not heard Sol's description of how Zoo works, it basically, I'll do it for you, it life taps 3 times and then it's dead. So this early additional damage from, guess what, your opponent, is pretty dicey here for Viper, but he does have Dark Glare raised dead, the Penflinger as well, and even a Soulfire if needed as a I cannot take any more damage next turn choice.
Yeah, I know in our testing, like, I'm constantly the person where, like, you know, when you're the slower deck playing against Zoo, I'm constantly the person that's just like, no, just hit them in the face. Do not trade into that 1/1 on the board. Just hit them in the face. Because literally, the games they win, they have 10 health. They deal 20 damage to themselves. So if you hit them for 1, that's 10% of their total health pool that they have for the entire game.
Sol is very passionate about this, I can tell you.
I actually am, yeah.
I did enjoy the fact that I pretty much said that, but he's so passionate, he didn't want to not say it himself.
Yep.
You do see the point here, and you see the respect from Viper. Viper just soul-fired the Solarian, and he could have discarded his Dark Glare. He didn't, and it was unlikely, but he could have. It was a risk.
It was. But now, the Glare, the Raised Dead, the Penflinger... Viper has infinite mana this turn, but he does not have infinite health, and that is the problem.
The Neophyte could really help out as well, get some wiggle room. Obviously,
That's
we
true.
can see that there's a Mana Giant and Antinidus, which looks kind of bad for a Neophyte to be played into, but there is an Evocation. And also, if he's going to play minions this turn, there's going to be an Arcane Missiles as well.
Yep.
Very
Right
interesting
now,
as well.
Psycho's hand is very dead, but Viper obviously does not know that. I think one of the scariest cards in the matchup that you always keep in mind, I think honestly, like, the big deciding factor of, you know, is your matchup good as the mage against Zoo is how many Firebrands you play in the list overall, because I think that's the absolute best card in your deck of just making sure you're ahead on around turn 4, which is normally what decides who's going to win the game.
Viper needs to hurry up.
It's, I mean... I mentioned it earlier, this is the Viper style, right? We saw Casey go off very, very quickly and give himself tons of time for the endgame decisions.
Oh,
and
did he miss? No.
I called it out. Raven, I called it out then. This is not hindsight being 2020. I called it out 2 series ago.
So I was about to defend Viper, right? Because I was going to say, because I thought he was going to make a different turn, that because he was only tapping, or potentially only tapping once, that he could play the turn out in his head and then just execute with the addition of 1 draw. I didn't realize that he was intending on, like, definitely going Matron, which then obviously the animation alone for Hand of Gul'dan discard takes ages. So you have to account for that. I was going to say, well, if you can play your turn out in your head, decide it and then execute, it's fine. But that from Viper was not okay.
Value trades in the middle, and then rip the Devolving. He's going to rip it with 3 targets still. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that's kind of the punish for that happening, huh?
He even draws a, draw the Soulfire? Or a Raised Dead?
A Soul Shear as well?
Oh yeah, he plays
Does
a
he already
Soul
have
Shear,
it?
doesn't he? Yeah, he plays
Yeah.
Soul Shear. Well,
Face! Yes, excellent work. Fully on board with that part of the turn.
Maybe this was the Antonidas tech was about all along, Sol. Soon,
I mean,
Fireball will just be lethal.
He's so far away from it, though.
But Fireball would be lethal.
I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but he's so far away from it.
This is the issue. Maybe Seiko didn't want to hit the Dark Glare to make Viper think he should do the self-damage again.
Time check. Caster's log. 5 minutes to 8. September 5th. Raven has officially lost the plot, and his brain no longer works.
I actually think I've done a good job today. I
You've done great.
This might be a personal best.
Endurance record for Raven, yeah.
But on a slightly more serious note to what I was joking about, Viper does have to very heavily consider every proc of self-damage in this game from this point onwards.
Double shard's insane. Giant's 0 now, right? Yeah, Giant is just 0. Oh, baby, that's a turn.
Imagine the discard on the Hand of Gul'dan there. Like, what are the odds?
Right back in it. Again, like, you know, just for consistency, I'm not just going to harp on about it when the turn goes wrong, but again, that turn ended with like 0.1 seconds left remaining. It's so scary when you're playing this deck. There's so many decisions to make that change so often.
You are completely right, and now this is a tough one from Seiko, because I'm leaning towards a magic trick, but unless it's what exactly Ray of Frost or Brain Freeze, then it doesn't really achieve too much. And now it achieves nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
I'm not sure what the Arcane Missiles was for, honestly. I thought Magic Trick would have always opened up more options. And you could still Arcane Missiles if the Magic Trick whiffed. So
I guess what it's doing is, like, Seiko can tank this turn, right? Like,
yeah.
There's 18 on board. He actually weirdly doesn't care that much about getting hit for 18. So he just played some other cards, which, like, discounted his Mana Giant, yada, 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 opened up some hand space for Evocation, all that kind of business, although Cram Session doesn't really do that. The turn he needs to panic more is next turn, right? That's when he needs a Blizzard or a Frost Nova or something. So I think this turn he was just like, oh, I mean, whatever. I'm not wasting my Frost Nova out on this turn where I'm just not dead on the board anyway.
To be fair, he could have still Magic Tricked and just not played a Nova if he got it. Like,
that's fair.
There was always the option, because now he almost... Well, he has to go Evo or Magic Trick, probably, right? Which he could have just used the mana for last turn. I don't know.
It could, yeah. But in that case, if you're not going to freeze the board, then Arcane Missiles did have some nice targets, right? The reduced damage on board, or you could like ping the Dark Glare to remove it, for example.
I guess you are right.
Or Face. I mean, Face is also a pretty nice target for the Arcane Missiles a lot of the time, right?
I think also here, Viper, because of this Brittle Bone in hand, he might want to make sure he has at least one board space available to him this turn. Same could be said for the
Shadowlight Scholar?
The card. Yes.
Alright, so this turn, much, much more desperate than the previous one.
And only 5 mana post-evocation.
Yeah, it's not great, is it? And I think since Blizzard is out of the picture, you might as well spend some mana first. Yeah, exactly. Kind of like this. Just open up more spots for the Frost Nova. None of those look very much like Frost Nova to me.
There is a Brain Freeze, though, right? I'm not going blind there.
That Flame Ward Brain Freeze is actually pretty freaking insane here.
The freeze most important because it does mean that there's only going to be 3 damage hitting face this turn. Yep. From the board, obviously we can see the Scholar in hand. That's a really big deal, actually.
This Giant's getting cheap. This Magic Trick could have a Nova inside it.
And a lot of these cards in Viper, I don't want to say are unplayable, but have larger and larger levels of risk of being played. Like, look at the Flame Imp, the Raised Dead. Even the tour guide is effectively a 1-1 if Viper doesn't want to tap, right? Which is rubbish, so...
And I go back to this is the 7, 8, 10 damage, whatever it was that Seiko did in the early game, right? Like, it's the health is the same, whether it's early or late. Like, Viper now has to be so much more careful with all of his tools because Seiko was aggressive early when he was given the opportunity to.
And also, this giant, it's much more killable this turn as well.
Yeah.
I guess, do you go the other way here?
He's going in.
I think I like this, right? Okay, that's funny. I do agree with this from Viper. I think you go the other way. Of instead of trying to like defend your life total, you actually just say, no way, they're not going to have like a Pyro on turn 7. Let's go all in and just chuck everything on board and say, you have to deal with this again or you will lose. I do like this a lot from Viper.
Yo, that second Mana Giant actually might just make Frost Nova game winning. Because obviously Viper's had the Brittlebone answer the entire time. He's again, as you can see, left himself that board space if he needs to use the Brittlebone. But now, because there's a second one, Rare Frost? It's nowhere near it. It can't be enough. It can't be enough, right? There's no way. No, there's no way. He gets to
freeze.
No, there's still 8 left. Even if he pings one off, there's still 7 left.
Arcane Missiles?
Arcane Missiles as well, yeah, maybe. Maybe we're getting there.
Because he's seen both Soulfires, right? Oh! I'm sure he's seen both Soulfires.
He has seen both Soulfires, yeah, you're correct. So now the AI is playable as well?
Why
isn't AI happening?
I guess he doesn't need the ping,
He wants to ping? Ping plays around second Shadowlight Scholar, which is the one remaining out, I guess? Alright, yeah, sure, fair enough. Happy with this.
Oh, yeah, he runs 2, doesn't he? Yeah, yeah, okay. Oh.
Penflinger down as well, right? Penflinger's gone, yep.
Penflinger's gone, and Viper only plays 1 Penflinger as well.
Yep.
Because there were some players today playing 2.
So yeah, this is just it. This is the one remaining source of damage, Shadowlight Scholar. And the ping played around it at the cost of playing Arcane Intellect that turn.
Who needs more cards? If you've got 2 8/8s going face.
Yeah.
Or I guess 1 8/8 going face.
Also, on top of which, yeah, okay, this is like... I can't formulate any argument that says to cast Arcane Intellect this turn.
But the Soul Fragment means it's not straight up if he just Brittlebones 1. It's not just... It's no longer a giant ping.
Soul Shear for more. Scholar. Can full remove. Can he?
Oh, yeah, because he can gain his mana back.
He regains, yeah.
Oh, this play's just sick.
Yeah, this play's insane. Okay.
Tony, you're our final hope.
1 magic trick remaining. Can Arcane Intellect into Magic Trick into Frost Nova? And then any of those draws along the way can also be Prime.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe he's winning? Okay.
Come on. Don't be ridiculous.
Oh! Okay. He's 2 off! He's just 2 damage off lethal with the Frostbolt after all of that. Are you kidding me? So I think there's 1 real card left, right? So there's no fatigue this turn for Viper. Even if there were, it would only be 1 fatigue, so he'd still be 1 damage off. So yeah, the out was Doomsayer. Wow. Psycho missed it. What a game! That was actually really sick. Enjoyed it.
That was insane. And Viper, honestly, I don't really want to use the word brave because he just, I guess, calculated it and worked out his best chances. But he could have actually stopped and just left the 1 giant and him on 11 health, and he chose to tap instead and worked a little bit of a different route there and made a much better play, which was, I think, at least for me, tough to see. And then Seiko, I think both players played just insane to get to like every possible tiny out on both sides of the board, almost every turn of the game. That was awesome. I want to watch that match again.
I mean, let's rewind and just, you know, for full journalistic integrity, we have to call that a recovery from Viper because there was, you know, an unforgivable mistake in the early game. Like, you cannot be doing that stuff at this level. But then you do have to commend him because he absolutely pulled it all back together and was playing great. by the end of the game. And I think if there's one thing that's clear, is like sometimes the reason why these turns go wrong on the rope for Viper is because he's into this deck. Like, he likes it and he's thinking about it on like an incredibly deep level, which sometimes gets him into trouble because he's just considering one too many things before he runs out of time on a turn.
And I think what I'd like to see as well from Viper and any other players who have this issue going forward is just remember the animations of certain interactions, right? No, because if you are going to do the discard a Hand of Gul'dan, it takes ages. Like, just factor it in and know you have to just force yourself to go quicker if you're considering Hand of Gul'dan or potentially Ysera portals and so on, so on. Like, all these animations that are slow and get players into trouble down to just how long they take, the players know. It's not news, is it? Like, it's not a new card or a new effect. So it is important just to remember that if there's a chance that it happens, get going that few seconds quicker because it can make all the difference, as we've seen.
Right, I think we saw, was it Eddie who got burned by the fact that you can't play any cards while the Brawl animation is happening in America's GM as well? Like a very similar type of thing. But, you know, again, like, that's how the game works. We're supposed to know that, you know? You have to play around those things.
Hey, though, we are going to go straight into our next game, of course. What looked like it could have been a 3-0 sweep. Seiko is going to be extended just a little bit as Viper starts to fight back. Pain Warrior against this Mage, and I think this could be a very good matchup for the Warrior. Do you agree? I know we've not seen much of it because of the bans, but...
I would suspect so, yeah. I would imagine this kind of weird combination of efficient early game minions with risky skipper, with armor gain, and then with the threat of burst damage on top of all of that as well. That seems like a very winning formula against Tempo Mage in particular. Because I know from just like the Bomb Warrior matchup, right, which I think a lot of people agree is the worst matchup for Tempo Mage, that, you know, Skipper beats you up a lot of the time if the Bomb Warrior is the Skipper variation. It's just, you know, way too good at clearing your early threats, you know, all of your early Sorcerer's Apprentice, Cyclones if you've gone for that, your early spell damage boards if you've gone for that. You know, Skipper can clear all that stuff up really efficiently. Obviously, this deck's Skipper package is even better than the one that Bomb Warrior plays when they do play it. So that should be very, very effective. And then, you know, the other point of Bomb Warrior or, say, Soul Demon Hunter and why, you know, they can potentially put good work in against Mage is that they just deal a ton of damage. Well, this deck does that too. They can threaten enormous burst damage. It's not quite in the same way as the Bomb deck does, but it's still very, very effective at doing that.
I was just a little bit surprised with this turn, actually. While you were giving us that breakdown, I actually thought Seiko was going to go for a Chemvala, just to set it up into an empty, well, not an empty board, into the egg, I guess, and then go with the Sorcerer's Apprentice and multiple spells with Cram Session next turn. I was a little bit surprised he didn't go for it there.
Go. You look away for 1 second and Seiko just sticks a Sorcerer's Apprentice?
Yeah.
How does he keep doing this?
I don't know. And maybe that's the reason. Maybe he felt safe in that the Sorcerer's Apprentice probably didn't die, but I don't know. I just... I foresaw this turn being the other way round. That's all. And maybe that's just the way my brain worked on how to approach it.
Yeah, and like honestly, Seiko's been such a pleasure to watch play Tempo Mage because he makes a lot of decisions very differently from what I did when I was largely playing a ton of Tempo Mage early in the expansion. But
oh god,
he wins.
Card. Not like this.
He wins a lot. He has one of the best win rates with the deck in the whole of GM with the largest sample size. Like, he's 18-11 overall before this series. So now make that 18-12, I guess. But they said 62% win rate, which the only other players that are around him are on a much smaller sample size. There's Wama and Zalay who are around him, but they've only played 8 games with the deck. So in terms of a significant sample, Seiko is the most successful player in GM globally with this deck.
Not going to protect him from a Blood Bowl Brute, though, as a shake of the head as Viper just cleans up that Chemvala quite easily.
What makes something real?
It does feel like a large part of that I'd love to get to the bottom with is he seems to get... Oh, no! He seems to get absolutely screwed by A-Bomb whenever he plays Jandis. No, that's not what I was going to say. He seems to get away with more apprentices than anyone else that I've seen. He seems to just play them super early and get rewarded for it more often. And, like, I can't believe that's random. Like, he must be seeing, you know, some glitch in the Matrix that us mere mortals are not identifying.
I will say, at least versus this deck, early on, there really isn't that many answers, if any, to to an apprentice, right? I know this is a bit weird because we've not really cast Pain Warrior this season.
I mean,
but...
Livewire Lance, Wallmaul Challenger, Corsair Cash, Risky Skipper.
You didn't see
quite a lot.
It would be a while though, right? Like Corsair Cash doesn't count. There's only one.
Oh, sorry, I meant Ankar, not Corsair.
Oh, okay.
Cash.
I was like,
yeah.
It's a bit brave. But yeah. There's only there's 2 weapons and the 2 Wallmaul Challengers really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
I don't know.
And Risky Skipper clears. I think it's a few. Yeah, I think it's enough to be getting on with, Raven.
All these sound like excuses and reasons why you don't stick apprentices, Sol, is because you don't play them.
I mean, I still win a lot with the deck. I just clearly do it in very different ways than Seiko does. I don't know. It's the beauty of Tempo Mage, Raven.
I wouldn't know. I just lose.
She's a nebulous beast. You can't pin her down to one playstyle.
Surprisingly annoying minion Seiko to deal with, honestly.
Yeah, pretty easy. Conjurer's calling. No on the backs. Okay, I figured it out. I know why he wins now. I figured it out. All right.
Imagine not playing Conjurer's Calling in your list, Sol. You don't get a win rate like Psycho's without Conjurer's Calling. I'll tell you that.
Orange, can I call in some backup here? Can I tag you in for this argument? I'm sick of it already.
Wait, let me just quick check. I don't see that player's name in these 16 that we're going over this season.
Oh! From the top rope!
Job done.
Just saying. It's not in the list.
Yo.
8 out of 10, Sol.
I mean, that was pretty good.
Viper's going to have to come up with something better, though, because this is a tough board to face down. Just the Earth Elemental and a Glaive Bound out of nowhere. This is not only tough to kill, it's going to kill Viper very quickly as well, right? The Frostbolt's in hand too, which is huge. I don't even know where he starts here, actually. Do you think it's worth potentially the Conjurers on the Glaive Bound after the attack?
Sure, it might just be Combustion, deal with the Armor Smith. In that case, maybe we're starting Primordial Studies? Maybe you just stick Antonidas and hit him in the head.
Okay, it's 13 minutes past 8 on... Sol has joined me in my craziness.
I don't think that's Raven level done. Like, genuinely, like, there was one of the famous weak points of this deck is that they just didn't really deal with big minions.
Right.
So if you had, like, a big win condition minion in your deck, you could just stick it a lot.
That's true. Especially through an Earth Elemental, which is honestly similar to my point about Conjurers as well, right? Like, how do you... Okay, this board's not really what I expected from the Conjurers, but it's just as hard to clear, right? And except you've got one extra minion now, and Seiko had already seen one Blood Boil Brute, so there's less chance of being completely blown out by, say, a double play.
Yeah.
There's still the Frostbolt as well. Primordial Studies can cash in some extra damage, and just that Thanos too. Yeah,
between Thanos Studies, Frostbolt, Evocation, Seiko has a good amount of reach on average that he can add to this. And now that's second Armor Smith being committed, which I think shows that Viper is absolutely scrambling here because he's giving up basically all of his burst heal potential here just to pick up a couple of extra points of armor on this turn.
Right.
You just stick with Tony, right? Don't you? Is one Fireball and an Antonidas on board just not enough in this scenario? Yeah.
Probably. Well, I did quickly look, and if he got a playable spell damage minion, which was extremely likely, he was still one-off lethal. With the additional spell damage and Frostbolt, of course. So yeah, I'm with you 100% here. This just is almost always lethal, especially with the kill on that other Armor Smith.
Right. 11 showing, 13 health. He needs to clear board, gain armor. It's not all happening.
Nope.
Viper looks suitably impressed with the situation.
What now?
This is one of the problems as well. Like I said earlier, Seiko does take the victory 3-1 over Viper. I was saying that Viper did tweet that he was trying to find something he liked and thought was a bit different, but just couldn't, and ended up kind of throwing this lineup together. So again, I just wonder, outside of, for example, the Zoo list, of course, I wonder how much he's put into Pain Warrior. And I'm not saying he played particularly bad or anything like that, but it is just tough going into a tournament day effectively with a lineup you do just already have admitted to you felt like you kind of just threw it together and hope it was good enough. And he did even say as well, seeing his opponent's lineups that he's got, he also felt bad because he didn't think his lineup did well versus what his opponents submitted to. So maybe just a rough day for Viper. I will say, outside of the obvious misplay with the rope earlier in that Zoo game, I do think once again he piloted Zoo with the strategy level off the charts, honestly. So it's super cool to see that. But again, congratulations to Seiko. I think he continues to bring some spice to his lineup, thinking outside the box, like you said. And these choices are making an impact in games. Look at the Broom in the Zoo, and look at even, the Antonidas in the Mage and the way he's playing Mage as well. Like, some people think, oh, you put random tech cards and it never really matters. Well, we've seen these ones are actually achieving something.
Yeah, I'm not quite convinced the Antonidas is going to catch on in the same way that we've seen the Broom doing so. But yeah, I think someone needed to fill the Hunter Ace shoes, right? And Seiko seems to have stepped right into it, because previously it was Hunter Ace who still does. If you catch any of his stream in the morning, he's always playing like 4 or 6 weird cards in his list, and then goes into everyone else's stream after he's finished and tells them that those cards are the nuts and why aren't you playing these cards? I've made the best build.
And then everyone does.
Yeah, But that's the thing, right, is that Hunter Ace kind of proved that point throughout GM over the last couple of seasons, where he would make decks and then they would become accepted as the best builds, and then they'd bleed slowly through Europe, through Americas, and then eventually, after a year or so, they'd reach APAC as well. So, someone needed to fill those boots, and I think Seiko has done a pretty good job of coming in and saying, no, I'm going to show everyone, not to get complacent with the builds and actually try and optimize these things and push things forward, and certainly is a big part of the responsibility of leading to a Broom in almost every deck moving forward.
Yeah, and we are going to be moving on to our final match of the day. It's going to be Bunny Hopper